So welcome to the second part of our Iceland video. I'm going to, in the first part we travelled along the south coast of Iceland as far as Hoffen, and in this second video I'm going to take you up the east coast and across the north and to Kirkjufell and then back to Reykjavik. Just to remind you, this isn't actually a video about the tour itself. We didn't really take much video. The only video clips I've got, and I might share the odd one or two, were just taken on my old iPhone, and I didn't go to take video. So we're just simply looking at the photographs, and especially the ones that I put up in my exhibition in Dundee a wee while ago. So yeah, let's start. We're on day 3 of the trip, and I'll show you the photographs. So day 3 we woke up to find we were in the middle of a storm. It was wild, absolutely wild, and our little Airbnb that we're staying in was up above the harbour in Hoffen, and it was really quite crazy, and we had to reverse the car right up to the front door to load up all our luggage. Just to try and keep everything as dry as possible. It was that bad, and we intended to go back round past Vesterhorn to the other end of the mountain range, which is called Eystrahorn. But at the point out there, there's a little lighthouse, which we thought would be quite picturesque. But it was wild, and we couldn't see any opportunity for photographs at all. The mountains had disappeared in the cloud. There was just nothing much to see. But just as I was about to give up, we looked along to the west, and there's a big spit of sand that goes for miles, and the sea was crashing in on it. And then suddenly, as I just saw the composition, and I had to make a run back up to the car to get the tripod and get a few shots of it. And there's 2 shots that I took that morning that remain as some of my favourites from the trip, and I'll show you them. One of them focuses on the sand itself, the other one focuses on the sea, and I really think that they give you a great impression of what the sea is like as it crashes in, and how dangerous it can be as well. And although there's nothing in the sky here, it's just basically grey. It balances, I think, the intricate detail of the sea itself at the bottom, and then there's the black stripe across the middle, and it just works. It just balances everything out very, very well. And I think, I took dozens of photographs at that point, but there was only 1 or 2 that really worked in the sense that the sea would crash in, and the white froth would be left behind in a quite an artistic way, and this one worked. The others just didn't. So we set off around the coast, and we just stopped when we felt like it. We came across this beach which has a huge rock stack just sitting out at the edge of the sea. I presume it's a big volcanic plug, and it should have made an absolutely fantastic composition, but the weather was so bad, and if you tried to do a long exposure, the filters would just get completely covered in spray and rain. The camera was getting shaken. You go down to the beach, and the beach was covered in footprints, and yeah, it was okay, but you couldn't get a really good image out of it, sadly. At one point I was hiding behind an umbrella trying to stop the camera from shaking in the wind. But it just goes to show you that's what Iceland's like, and you just have to live with it and get on with it. So we moved on to a little fishing village further along the coast just before we started heading north. Stopped for lunch and went for a wander, and the wind had dropped a bit, which was helpful. but we still had this low mist and cloud, and I took an image of a little harbour structure from the main road almost, and I didn't think too much about it at the time. I kind of thought the building was quite nice. It wasn't until later, after I got home and edited it, that it really started to grow on me. And once it was printed out on a good archival paper, it started to really bring out the detail in the image, and things like the waterfall in the background suddenly just jumped out at you, and also the reflections of the building. And I presume this was a storehouse or something like that, I don't know, but the colours were muted. The reddish colour on the roof and the brown of the timber cladding just suited the picture. So yes, that became one of my favourites unexpectedly. I can't remember I'll put the name of the little town up on the screen. I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce it. And actually we took a wander round to that building, round the harbour, and looking back at the pier and where the dock where the fishing boats come in, there was a very modernist 1960s style concrete rectangular building. Not very pretty, but I mean it's a working harbour, it's what you would expect. But in the background is this mountain which is almost like a pyramid. It's a perfect pyramid almost. And the two somehow clashed beautifully. And I turned it into black and white just to kind of exaggerate the shapes, and not one that I'd put up in the exhibition, but I thought I would share it with you just because I actually quite like it. And there's something about that brutalist building against the natural hillside beyond, which I don't know, just the architect in me, it really attracts itself to me somehow. So after we left the village, we kind of decided that we were going to get some miles on the clock and get somewhere, because we really weren't going anywhere far, and we weren't going to stop at every single waterfall on the way. And then we drove past this waterfall, and of course everybody went, we have to stop. So we all got out of the car, climbed up to this lovely waterfall. There was nobody else there. We pretty much had it to ourselves, and I took a panorama shot of the waterfall on the left hand side and it tumbling down, and the river from it curved round and disappeared off across the landscape. And that was fine until packed everything up, ready to go home, and then go back to the car, and then the sun came out and completely transformed the view, and we ended up having to do all the same photos again, this time with the sun. And what a difference it made. It just caught the top of the water just as it tumbled over the top of the waterfall, and just gave the landscape some depth. I did do a bigger version where you could see the whole of the river curving round, but actually I prefer this slightly more tightly cropped version. And it didn't make it into the exhibition, but I thought I would share this one with you anyway, because it was quite a nice view. So we ended up going over the mountains, headed north, and we stayed that night in a little hostel, which was really quite cool place to stay. And the following day, it was an extremely busy day. We walked quite a few miles and we drove an awful lot more. And our first stop was this canyon, which I'm sure you've seen photographs of before. As there were so many of the big locations that we went to, or we'd planned to go to, it was a huge disappointment. It was great to see it, but what had happened is that they had opened the floodgates on the dam further up, and all the water was a dark muddy brown colour as opposed to the clear blue water that you see in all the photographs. So even converting some of them to black and white didn't really help matters at all, and ended up focusing in on the more kind of intimate details of the canyon and the rock around it, and it was great to see it, and I definitely go back on a better day, but sadly it didn't work photographically very well. We also ended up, we went to Dettifoss, the big waterfall, and Godafoss, and both of them were just so busy with visitors and tourists, and the skies were grey. Ended up really just being a tourist visit rather than a photographic visit, and which is a shame, but I guess we can go back. There was one photo that stood out that day, and on the drive occasionally we'd just see something and somebody would shout stop, and we pulled into a little car park at the side of the road, and it gave us a view out over the landscape which was just immense, and it looked like, I've compared it to Mars. At the moment we're just seeing pictures coming in from the NASA Perseverance rover, which landed on Mars just a few days ago at the time of filming this, and honestly the landscape in this part of Iceland, right in the far north, just looked like it could be on Mars or the moon or somewhere. Absolutely incredible. And so I took some images from that little car park, completely unexpected, and this one with the road winding through the landscape and the lorry giving you a sense of scale was one that ended up in the exhibition. We ended up at the city of Akureyri, and on the way we passed some volcanic springs and some mud pools, and we really had seen very little of it. Although Iceland is very well known for it, it's not all over the island by any means imagination. So we were able to stop and grab a couple of photographs beside the volcanic vents and the mud pools. So that was quite good fun. I did get one photo I quite liked. It didn't go in the exhibition, but there was a photographer that got quite close to one of the pools, and again he gave it a bit of scale, which really helps. And it was nice to see it. We could actually smell it in the car before we saw it. It's really quite pungent, shall we say, even inside the car from miles away. So yeah, it was good. I was glad we stopped over. So yeah, day 5. We were still travelling west at this point, and we were going to stop off at a place called Blöndos, it's got quite a famous rock out in the sea, which you may have seen before. It's called Hvitserka. If I pronounce these wrong, sorry, but I'll put the names up. And the road was absolutely terrible. All the roads in Iceland were fantastic. Even the gravel roads were great, but this particular one wasn't. It was horrific. It was about an hour of just driving through massive potholes. But we got there, and unbelievably there was a rainbow over the rock, and of course we jumped out the car and grabbed all the gear and went running down to the beach. But sadly, it didn't really work. The rain, then it was drizzling, which is why we had the rainbow. So again, the lens and the photos were covered in spots, and there were tourists doing star jumps in bright yellow rain ponchos right in the way, and there's just nothing you can do. So although I got a photo, it's not particularly great, and it's certainly not one that ended up in the exhibition. But when we kind of walked back up the beach and looked in the opposite direction away from the rock, the thing that we'd actually come to photograph, and we walked back down the beach and we looked over to the mountains in the distance. There was another beach way off, miles off, and it looked really interesting because we had these little grassy tussocks that are so common in Iceland, and the water, the light was reflecting off the water sitting on the sand, and I just loved the way that all the colours were working together. Though it was quite muted, the greens on the grass really stood out, and again it was the photograph is compressed because I was probably on 200mm lens at the time, so the mountains in the background look a lot closer than they actually were. But somebody later commented that they thought the mountains and just the way the cloud was coming over the top of the mountains made it look as if it was a giant tsunami ready to crash in over the landscape. And so yeah, this one worked well, and I ended up putting it up in the exhibition. Yeah, so after that we didn't really stop that much. We wanted to get to Kirkafell before sunset so we could try and get a nice sky at Kirkafell Mountain. So our photography was kind of limited to taking shots out of a moving car window at 60 miles an hour on a gravel track. But actually there was one or two that I really quite liked, mostly because of the clouds. They're not particularly sharp or detailed, and I wouldn't put them in the exhibition, but I still quite like them. And we got the odd rainbow as well, passing through the scene. But yeah, we got to Kirkafell and found our Airbnb, which was actually right opposite the mountain. You could not have got a better location from a photographer's point of view. And we all went up to the obvious place, the most cliched viewpoint probably in the whole of Iceland, maybe, it's debatable. But we went to the waterfall in front of Kirkafell Mountain, and yeah, there was a sunset, but really it was okay. It wasn't anything to write home about, and yet again there were tourists everywhere. Well, in this case it wasn't so much tourists, it was photographers. We were just lined up amongst something like 30 other photographers at that spot behind the barrier, and yeah, I mean, it's not really what photography is about, everybody taking exactly the same photograph, exactly the same scene, but I guess it's something you kind of have to almost get it out of your system when you go to Iceland. And if it had been a really nice sunset, an amazing sunset, I would be singing its praises, I guess, but it was okay. We did get a brief glimpse of the Northern Lights, which was fantastic. It was the only time we saw them in the whole trip. Nothing major. It was I would say it would be a good night for Scotland, the Northern Lights of Scotland, but it was a pretty average night for Iceland. So at least we managed to get a shot of the Northern Lights, and especially in that location over Kirkafell. So in the morning I actually went back up to the waterfall, but I took an image looking not at the waterfall itself but over the top of the waterfall to see if I could catch the sun rising up over the little hill in the distance. It didn't look like the sky was going to do anything amazing in terms of colour, so I thought maybe you could get a little sunburst as the sun rose up. And it's quite a nice composition with the river running through the scene, and yeah, it's a nice enough picture, but not necessarily one that I would put in the exhibition. So for the rest of that day, we travelled further west, right out to the most westerly point of the peninsula, and then worked our way. There's a nice lighthouse out there, so we photographed the lighthouse, and then we worked our way along the coast, heading back towards Reykjavik, and we stopped at various places just to get a few photographs. But the place we were definitely aiming for was the Black Church, which is a very famous spot for photographers to go to. And as we're approaching, we could see this. There was a structure. There was something happening, and at first we thought maybe somebody's filming something at the church, as it looked like there was a crane or something there. It actually turned out to be the one day of the year probably that they were painting the church. So much to everyone's disappointment, there was a cherry picker right in front of the church and scaffolding around it, and so the opportunities for any nice compositions were extremely limited. This was the only one that I got, and that was simply by cropping out the cherry picker and the scaffolding, and it's not one that I put in the exhibition, but at least I can tell the story about the day we went to the Black Church, and never really got any good photos. But that's life, that's photography. The next day we ended up in Reykjavik, and the weather was terrible, torrential rain, it was windy. We were just decided to be tourists for the day. There was no way we were getting any decent photos out of it. So we went to all the haunts, went to the cathedral and places like that. But the whole trip was great, absolutely brilliant place to go and photograph. It was great to go with friends as well, and I would definitely go back without a shadow of a doubt, and hopefully spend a bit longer in some of these locations that worked so well last time. I'll leave you with the images that I briefly showed during these clips, and I still have prints of them all available. If anybody's interested, just get in touch, and yeah, hopefully we'll do this again sometime. Okay, bye for now.